Did you know Vietnam has one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia, yet some of its most profitable trades are hidden behind closed doors? They call it the land of gentle hospitality, of sacred temples, street food, and serenity. A place where the past feels carefully folded into every corner of daily life. For many, Vietnam appears like a painting in motion, warm, inviting, untouched. But step just beyond the postcard and a different Vietnam appears. One that doesn't smile for the camera. One that survives in shadows and silence. In the old quarters of Hanoi, beneath flickering red lanterns and fading French balconies, stories unfold without words. Stories negotiated in whispers and silence. In these narrow alleys where footsteps echo and time feels slower, women wait. Some sit behind mirrors. Some sing in rooms with velvet walls. Some disappear when the lights go out. Officially, they don't exist. No records, no licenses, no questions. But their work fuels entire districts, funds nightclubs, and floats the tourist economy in ways that brochures never mention. This isn't just about transactions. It's about tradition bending beneath pressure, about poverty dressed in perfume, about choices that aren't really choices at all. And while some come looking for affection, others come seeking control. In a country where modesty is virtue and family is sacred, the contrast is sharper than glass. What begins in a back room often ends in silence, sometimes across borders, sometimes across lifetimes. Later in this journey, one will see how this underground economy doesn't just change lives, it changes culture itself. A culture that once whispered to the ancestors, now speaks in scripts rehearsed for foreign eyes. But that's not now, that's later. For now, just remember this. In Vietnam, not everything that smiles is free, and not everything that's free comes without a price. Vietnam isn't one thing, it's thousands. A land where monks chant in smoke-filled temples just a few blocks from neon-lit karaoke bars, where rice paddies stretch into forever, even as high-rises claw at the clouds. A place where incense and exhaust mix in the morning air, and where war memorials rest quietly behind souvenir stalls. The past here isn't buried, it's layered, folded into the fabric of daily life, wounds turned into symbols, loss recast as resilience. Every street tells a story, and none of them are finished. Tourists arrive in waves, drawn by the promise of flavor, color, warmth, and Vietnam delivers, but only what it chooses to show. Beneath the surface, other truths persist, some beautiful, some broken, some held in place by generations unwilling or unable to forget. This is a country where capitalism gallops forward, even as the soul tugs backward, where ancient values live uneasily beside algorithms, where foreign money reshapes landscapes faster than the past can settle. But this is not a travel guide. It's a search for what lives beneath the surface, a journey into the parts of Vietnam rarely photographed, a story of quiet power, unseen pressures, and the deeply human choices that shape every corner of this place. Because to truly see Vietnam today, one must first look where no one is pointing. Number one, behind the smiles, Vietnam's sexual underground. They say Vietnamese women are gentle, soft-spoken, gracious, that their beauty lies in modesty, their strength in patience. It's a belief printed on postcards, painted on silk, echoed in guidebooks. But behind some of those smiles, there's something else. In the back streets of Ho Chi Minh City, behind frosted glass doors and velvet curtains, there's an economy that thrives in whispers. Not just the known corners of red light districts, but in places that blend in. Massage parlors with cheerful signs, karaoke lounges filled with laughter, even luxury apartments in high-rises with no names on the doors. Here the transaction is never spoken aloud. There's no menu, just a glance, a pause, a door left slightly open. Tourism has brought opportunity. It has also brought demand. And demand in a country where poverty still grips entire regions creates supply, one that isn't always voluntary. Some of the women were promised jobs in the city, hospitality, beauty salons, even teaching, until the moment the door closed behind them. Others come by choice, but only after all other choices have run out. A child to feed, a debt to pay, a husband who disappeared. There are entire villages where young women have vanished. Left behind are elderly parents, crumbling homes, and silence. The industry doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly, without confrontation. Because confronting it would require confronting the conditions that make it thrive: low wages, uneven development, and a deeply rooted cultural silence around sex. Vietnam remains a conservative society on the surface. Modesty is praised. Family is sacred. Public morality is tightly guarded. And yet, within this contradiction, an industry survives and grows. Some estimate it feeds billions of dollars into the economy each year. But numbers mean little when weighed against the costs carried in private: shame, isolation, and in many cases, disappearance. It's not uncommon to see foreign men walking hand in hand with Vietnamese women barely old enough to be legal. No one says a word, because saying something would require asking questions, and most prefer to look away. But the cost of this silence isn't just personal, it's cultural. A slow erosion of values once held close. A quiet rewriting of norms. When commodification becomes familiarity, what happens to identity? And if the women in these rooms are seen as services, what does that say about the future of a nation still defining its place in the world? Later, this story will return, not in the alleyways, but in the villages and mountains, where the cultural damage runs deeper than profit. But for now, the story moves from behind the curtains to beneath the ground, where the war never really ended, and where the next truth lies buried in soil and memory. Number 2, the country where war never ended. In the soft morning haze of Quang Tri, the land looks peaceful. Rice fields stretch beyond the horizon, dotted with farmers bent low, water up to their knees. Buffalo graze beside narrow dirt paths. The air hums with the quiet rhythm of rural life. But beneath the surface, something remains. Decades after the last American helicopter lifted off a rooftop, parts of Vietnam still carry remnants of a war that no longer fills textbooks but continues to shape lives. In these fields, the war never really left. Scattered beneath the soil are more than memories. There are weapons, unexploded ordnance, bombs, shells, grenades, mines. Buried, forgotten by those who dropped them, never forgotten by those who live above them. Quang Tri province alone accounts for some of the highest concentrations of leftover munitions in the world. Some of them have been there since the 1960s. Some are still active, and all of them are silent until they're not. Every year, men are lost while planting rice. Children are maimed while playing. Families are torn apart by something they can't see, can't hear, but know is always there. In one village, children are taught how to recognize danger before they're taught to write. They know which shapes to fear, which colors mean stop. They carry warnings like lessons, and still, some don't make it home. For the farmers, there's no alternative. These are the only fields they have. To leave them untouched is to go hungry. So they walk into danger every morning with tools in hand, hoping that today the earth stays still. Organizations have come to help: demining groups, humanitarian aid. But there's too much land, too little time. Some areas have been marked, mapped, fenced off. Others remain uncertain. Every step, a guess. Every season, a gamble. The war that left this behind was fought by men long gone, but the cost continues to be paid by their grandchildren. Here, peace was declared. But safety never followed. In the stillness of the countryside, death doesn't arrive in gunfire. It waits, beneath mud, under roots, beside schools. And when it does return, it does so without warning. But even in places where the soil itself is dangerous, life presses forward. Families rebuild. Children play. The market still opens, because they must. Yet just beyond the horizon, another threat rises. Not from the ground, but from what people pour into it. A different kind of contamination, one that travels faster, spreads wider, and hides in plain sight. And this time, it isn't just the countryside at risk. Number 3, a plastic nation. Ha Long Bay draws millions each year. Towering limestone islands rise from the water like ancient guardians. Junks glide across jade waves. The mist clings to the cliffs, giving everything a sense of quiet majesty. But beneath the surface, plastic floats, bottles, wrappers, fishing nets. Some drift in plain sight, others hang just below, moving with the tide, invisible until they brush against a swimmer's leg or catch in a boat's propeller. This UNESCO World Heritage Site, once celebrated for its natural purity, now carries the weight of what's been left behind. Vietnam produces over 3 million tons of plastic waste every year, and much of it never makes it to landfills. It ends up in rivers, canals, and coastlines, washed in from crowded cities, poured out from factories, dropped carelessly from market stalls. In the markets of Hanoi, plastic is everywhere. Each vegetable is wrapped, each meat portion double-bagged. Styrofoam trays stack high. Vendors move quickly, customers move faster, and packaging, cheap and convenient, follows every transaction. Some say it's habit, others say it's necessity. But either way, the result is the same: land and water struggling to breathe. Children swim in canals, clouded with waste. Fishermen cast their nets through surfaces covered in film. Mangroves, once teeming with life, now trap bags like spiderwebs. In some villages, trash piles rise taller than the fences meant to contain them. And yet amid the mess, small hands reach for something better. In the city of Hue, a group of students gathers every weekend. They carry sacks, they wear gloves. They sort by color, by texture, by recyclability. What they collect is often more than they can carry and less than what returns the next morning. Still, they come back again and again. One girl collects bottle caps to build art installations. Another speaks at schools. They know they're outmatched, but they believe the fight is still worth showing up for. Some communities are taking notice. A few hotels now offer reusable straws. Local cafes experiment with banana leaves instead of plastic wrap. But change moves slowly, and plastic moves faster. The damage isn't just environmental. In the Mekong Delta, fishermen report lower catches. Tourists avoid once popular beaches. Livelihoods shrink as pollution grows. And for a country that depends heavily on its natural image, this contrast between what's shown and what's hidden comes at a cost far greater than revenue. But the problem isn't isolated to waste alone. It leads somewhere else, into something consumed, not just seen. Something people drink each morning with trust, unaware of what may be inside. Because in Vietnam, even the nation's proudest export may not be what it seems. Number 4, the motorcycle madness. In the heart of Hanoi, the air trembles, not from silence, but from motion. Beneath a sky cut by tangled electrical wires and balconies that lean too close, millions of wheels move at once. They hum, buzz, and roar together, filling every inch of road with motion so dense it looks like liquid steel pouring through the city. There are over 65 million motorbikes in Vietnam. That's nearly 2 for every adult. In cities like Ho Chi Minh, the roads don't breathe. They pulse. At first glance, it's chaos. No lanes, no clear rules. Left turns blur into right turns. Pedestrians move like chess pieces, calculating each step in rhythm with the flow. But stay long enough and a strange order appears. Families of 5 balance on a single scooter, father in front, toddler wedged between knees, mother at the back, infant wrapped to her chest, and a plastic bag of chickens dangling from the handlebar. All of it moves, together, without collision, without hesitation. Street vendors navigate between trucks. School children race past taxis. Elderly women grip handlebars with plastic gloves and floral helmets. It's more than commuting. It's survival. The motorbike is transportation, delivery van, dining table, and escape route. Every morning, cities wake not with alarm clocks, but with engines. By 6 a.m., markets are alive, baskets of produce strapped to steel frames. By noon, ice blocks melt in crates strapped to the backs of riders who move without pause. By evening, headlights multiply into rivers of light, washing through intersections with no stop signs, only instinct. There are unwritten rules. Don't stop in the middle. Don't hesitate. Keep moving. Trust the rhythm or get lost in it. For outsiders, crossing a street feels like a game of luck. For locals, it's muscle memory. They don't wait for gaps. They create them. Traffic lights exist, but they're often optional. Horns aren't used in anger, but as signals, soft warnings. I'm here. Don't move. Keep going. In some provinces, it's common to see pigs, cement, live ducks, or 10-foot bamboo poles balanced effortlessly. There are motorbikes carrying refrigerators. Some carry trees. Insurance is rare. Accidents are frequent. But the system continues because it must. Public transport is limited. Private cars are expensive. And for the average Vietnamese worker, a motorbike is more than a vehicle. It's the only way forward. The government has floated ideas to restrict them, especially in crowded cities. Environmental concerns, noise, safety. But how do you regulate something so embedded in the fabric of everyday life? Traffic is a problem, yes. But in Vietnam, traffic is also an identity. And for those who believe it's only the roads that overwhelm, there's a different kind of noise waiting inland, one far older, one that echoes through stone and shadow. A silence filled with secrets, and it doesn't move. It watches. Number 5, the rising tide of censorship. In a quiet cafe in Da Nang, the espresso machine hisses. Laptops glow. Conversations are hushed. But there's something else, an absence. The absence of certain words, certain questions, certain names. Vietnam's internet is fast, affordable, and widely accessible. But its freedom is conditional. The country has one of the highest rates of Facebook usage in Asia. Millions scroll, like, and share. But what they can share, and who can see it, is tightly monitored. A single status update that challenges the state can trigger a knock on the door. A meme can mean months in detention. Bloggers who once wrote openly about corruption have vanished. Some are under house arrest. Others are serving long sentences in remote prisons. There are no official explanations, only silence. The government's grip doesn't need to shout. It works through software, surveillance, and suggestion. Phone calls are monitored. Certain keywords on messaging apps trigger warnings. Posts disappear. Entire websites go dark overnight. Vietnam's cyber unit, estimated to be tens of thousands strong, is tasked not just with removing content, but shaping it. Their job is to guide opinion, to correct narratives, to drown dissent in distraction. It's not just political speech that's risky. Environmental protests, labor strikes, even calls for better housing conditions can be labeled threats to national security. The definition is wide. The consequences are sharp, and yet people find ways. Satire has become a language of resistance. Artists smuggle criticism into music videos, hiding messages in metaphor. Comedians perform jokes where the punchline trails off, but the meaning is clear. Graffiti appears in alleyways. There one day, gone the next. Code words replace banned phrases. In the comments sections of state-run news pages, sarcasm lives between the lines. And while many remain silent, a few voices still rise, carefully, cleverly, constantly watching. Some have tried to leave the country to speak more freely. Others choose to stay, finding safety in ambiguity. The risk is real, but so is the urge to push back. Even youth influencers, those with millions of followers, walk a tightrope, endorse the wrong idea, question the wrong policy, and entire careers vanish. Sponsorships pulled, channels wiped clean, their online presence erased. There's a term locals use quietly, disappeared. It doesn't mean lost, it means taken. Quietly, without public trial, without answers. And in this system, fear doesn't always need force. Sometimes it only needs the memory of what happened to the last person who spoke too loudly. But censorship creates something else too, creativity under pressure. And in Vietnam, it has sparked a different kind of art, one that doesn't hang in galleries, one that dances, sings, and performs, just out of reach of those who would silence it. Because while the government controls the press, it can't always control performance. And in the spaces between official lines, a new stage has appeared, one where stories are told, not through headlines, but through costume, gesture, and ancient rhythm. Number 6, the coffee you're drinking might be fake. The air in Buon Ma Thuot smells like roasted beans. Sidewalks are lined with burlap sacks. Inside them, what looks like coffee. Brown, glossy, warm from the sun. Workers turn the piles with rakes, slowly, methodically. From a distance, it feels like tradition. But up close, something doesn't fit. Vietnam is the second largest coffee producer in the world. Every year it exports hundreds of thousands of tons, mostly Robusta, the cheaper, more bitter cousin of Arabica. It's strong, it's cheap, and it's in instant coffee cups around the globe. But not all of it is coffee. In certain batches, what passes as ground beans contains more than coffee grounds, powdered starch, burned corn, ground up soybeans, even crushed cashew shells. They're mixed carefully, roasted to a near black sheen, then sprayed with chemicals that mimic the smell of fresh brew. It's a blend designed not for taste, but for price. In low-income neighborhoods, these fake blends fill the shelves. Market vendors sell them in unmarked plastic bags. Cafes serve them without hesitation. And most customers don't notice the difference. The chemicals used vary. Some are banned in other countries. Some aren't labeled at all. There's no regulation tight enough to catch everything that slips through. And when profit margins stretch thin, cutting corners becomes the standard. In one factory, inspectors found floor sweepings, stones, dirt, even plastic shards mixed into shipment-ready stock. The producer was fined. The operation moved. And while the worst examples are rare, the practice is widespread enough that even honest cafes sometimes don't know what's in their supply. But the story deepens in the highlands, where the real beans are grown. Here, smallholder farmers work steep hills under harsh sun. Families tend rows of shrubs that feed global chains. They handpick cherries, dry them, clean them, bag them. And yet many of them can't afford to drink their own product. Pure coffee is exported. The good beans are sold to middlemen. What's left behind, or priced too high, is substituted. So the farmer who wakes at 5 a.m. to harvest real coffee may still sip imitation brew at noon. The irony isn't lost on them, but the cost of clean beans is simply too high. Vietnamese coffee culture is vast. Egg coffee, coconut coffee, iced milk coffee, café soda. Streets buzz with silver drip filters and low plastic stools. It's a ritual, a rhythm, a daily pause. But even in these cultural moments, what's in the cup might not be what it claims to be. And the long-term health risks? Still unclear. Few studies have been done, fewer have been published. So what happens when the most cherished product of a nation is slowly diluted, physically and symbolically? What does it mean when a daily tradition becomes just another transaction? And more importantly, what other everyday comforts hide secrets just beneath the surface? Because in Vietnam, even the quietest meals can carry stories no one expected to hear. And the next one might be on your plate. Number 7, ghost weddings and spirit marriages. In a quiet village on the outskirts of Nam Dinh province, incense curls into the twilight air. Red cloth drapes over an empty chair. A wedding feast is laid. Whole roasted chicken, sticky rice, fruit cut into shapes. At the center of it all, a black and white photograph stares out from a gilded frame. The groom isn't late. He's been dead for 3 years. In parts of Vietnam, death doesn't end a person's role in the family. It only changes it. Among certain ethnic communities in rural regions, ghost marriages are still quietly practiced, ceremonies where the living are wed to the dead. Sometimes it's between two deceased individuals. Other times, a living person, often young, sometimes just a child, is married off to someone who passed before they could fulfill their destiny. The reasons vary. Some families believe a restless spirit must be appeased, that without marriage the soul wanders, bringing misfortune. Others see it as fulfilling a social duty to ancestors, making sure even the dead aren't left without descendants. The ceremonies follow ancient scripts. Paper clothes, symbolic jewelry, and offerings are burned so they might reach the spirit world. Families agree on dowries, and relatives from both sides attend. A marriage certificate may even be signed between a grieving mother and a hopeful in-law. In some cases, parents arrange these marriages to elevate the spiritual status of a deceased child. In others, they believe the union will protect the living partner from bad luck or spiritual disturbance. Critics call it superstition, but for many it's a way of maintaining order in a universe shaped by honor, duty, and unseen forces. These beliefs stretch back centuries, blending elements of Taoism, Buddhism, and local animist practices. They're whispered, rarely publicized, and almost never questioned by those who practice them. And yet times are changing. Urban families are increasingly distancing themselves from such customs. Younger generations, educated in cities, resist the idea of tying their futures to a ritual they don't understand. But in rural communities where oral tradition carries more weight than textbooks, the rituals remain alive, kept quiet but not forgotten. One girl in Bakjang was married at age 10 to a boy who died before birth. The two families had known each other for years. A shaman interpreted the signs. The wedding was small but official. The girl now wears a ceremonial ring and avoids romantic relationships, believing she's already bound. Another case involved a posthumous match between a man killed in an accident and a woman who died from illness. Their families arranged the wedding to complete fate, fearing spiritual consequences if they left their children alone in the afterlife. There are no legal frameworks for such unions, but they continue in pockets of the country, rarely challenged and often supported by local community structures. Some villagers believe ghost marriages can heal the grief that lingers, giving closure through ritual. But the emotions are complex. For the living spouse, especially children, the weight of the arrangement can echo for years. Some feel honored, others confused, a few quietly resentful. And while the ceremonies are spiritual, their impact touches the physical world. Future romantic relationships, inheritance claims, even daily routines can be shaped by the marriage of someone who no longer walks the earth. So what happens when ancient belief meets modern resistance? Because there's another world within Vietnam's spiritual map, one filled with offerings, ghosts, and unspoken rules, where ancestors don't just watch, they act, and the consequences of neglecting them are believed to reach far beyond this lifetime. Number 8. The Cult of the Virgin Teachers. The morning light cuts through bamboo trees as school children line up outside a small village classroom. The air is humid. A rooster crows nearby. Inside, a woman stands at the blackboard, her dye pressed and spotless, her hair pinned neatly back. She writes in chalk, her tone soft, her posture exact. The children listen, wide-eyed. She is respected, she is trusted, she is unmarried. In rural Vietnam, the figure of the unmarried female teacher carries a complicated kind of reverence. She is called Ko Jiao, teacher yes, but also something more. In some communities, she is seen as a symbol of sacrifice, a quiet embodiment of dignity, but beneath the surface of admiration lies a more complicated truth. In many villages, especially in the northern provinces, a woman who devotes her life to teaching and remains single is viewed as someone who gave everything to serve others. But as the years pass and no wedding takes place, the tone changes. The compliments fade, the glances shift. There are whispers about why she never married, about what might be wrong, and eventually about whether she has missed her purpose altogether. In one province, a group of older teachers formed a close-knit circle, meeting every Saturday for tea. They shared stories of students and curriculum, but they rarely spoke of themselves. One woman in her late 50s said in passing that her mother still lights incense, asking ancestors to help her find a man before the end. These women are often assigned to far-off schools, where roads are broken and houses are scattered across hills. They walk for hours to reach their students. They teach children who call them mother teacher. But when holidays come, Tet, Mid-Autumn, Lunar New Year, they return to their families alone. And the questions resume. Marriage in traditional Vietnamese culture is not just personal, it is filial duty. A woman is expected to bring continuity to her family line. Her life is often measured by her ability to transition from daughter to wife to mother. Teaching is noble, but being alone past 30 is seen by some as unnatural. In certain communities, unmarried women over 30 are quietly avoided at social functions. Matchmakers stop calling. Even coworkers, once warm, begin to speak more carefully. Some students ask why their teacher lives alone. Others wonder aloud when her wedding will happen. The mental toll is rarely acknowledged. Depression is still a stigmatized subject in rural Vietnam. Many who suffer remain silent. A few seek refuge in temples. Others lose themselves in their work, arriving early, staying late, pouring their time into the classroom as if the act of teaching might silence the ticking clock. But education alone does not erase cultural weight. One woman in Ho Chi Minh province stopped applying for promotions because higher positions meant further isolation, more distance from the only family that still called her by her name, rather than her title. There is no public discussion about this, no national policy addressing the pressures faced by these women. Their stories are shared in corners, in glances, in unfinished sentences. And yet across the country, thousands of them keep showing up, smiling in school photos, standing at the front of the class, writing carefully on the board, saying nothing about what it costs. So what happens when a society worships your service, but forgets your soul? And what if the role you're praised for becomes the very reason you're left behind? The answer might begin, strangely, on a beach, where the waves wash up more than sand, and where admiration, once again, collides with something far more uncomfortable. Number 9, tourism's hidden cost, culture for sale. In the hills of Sapa, where fog clings to terraced rice fields and the wind carries the faint echo of drums, an old woman adjusts her headdress. Her hands move slowly, worn from decades of weaving and harvest. Behind her, a child giggles in traditional dress, embroidered sleeves, too big for her frame, cheeks painted with rouge. She doesn't wear it to school. She wears it for tourists, the camera clicks, bills are exchanged, another photo for another memory. This is where it begins, the transformation of culture into currency. Ethnic minorities in Vietnam, Hmong, Dao, Tay, and others, once lived in isolation with distinct languages, rituals, and clothing styles passed down for centuries. Their ways were quiet, proud, and deeply rooted in ancestral memory. But the boom of tourism in the early 2000s brought a new economy, and with it, a new kind of pressure. Villages became backdrops, rituals became routines. Weddings, funerals, even prayer dances were rescheduled to fit with tour group itineraries. What was once sacred became scheduled. Visitors came expecting color, exoticism, and smiles. So the locals gave them that. But over time, what they gave was no longer theirs. Ceremonies that once marked real transitions, like puberty, marriage, or harvest, are now performed twice daily at resort courtyards. Ancient chants are shortened. Symbols are simplified. Language is replaced with rehearsed English greetings. And souvenirs? Rows of handmade items line markets in Hoi An and Hanoi. Bracelets, bags, tunics, often stitched by machines in factories miles away. Sellers, dressed in imitation garb, tell stories they no longer believe, repeating lines fed by tour operators. Each item labeled authentic, each interaction rehearsed. Even the iconic full moon lantern festivals of Hoi An, once an intimate Buddhist offering, are now choreographed events. Local residents have seeded riverfront streets to light shows and floating candles sold in plastic trays. Young women pose in Odai for selfies they'll never post. And around every corner, cameras wait. But behind the performances, the real culture recedes. Teenagers in tribal villages now prefer jeans to hand-woven skirts. Ceremonial songs are forgotten. Elders mourn that their grandchildren speak more Mandarin than their own ethnic dialects, because that is what the tourists understand. One girl, age 16, performs a fire blessing every evening. She's never seen the real one, only the version rewritten by a tour agency. She earns $5 per night, more than her mother makes in the fields, but she doesn't know the meaning of the words she chants. What happens when an entire identity is rehearsed? When every dance, costume, and smile is sold? And what about those who don't want to sell? In some regions, communities resist. They close their temples to outsiders. They ban photography. They teach in secret. But those pockets grow smaller each year, shrinking beneath the pressure of market demands. The tourists rarely notice. They leave with full memory cards and handcrafted ornaments, never realizing that the culture they captured was a replica, a curated show designed for comfort, not truth. And here's the part most never see. In a quiet homestay far from the main trail, an elder woman still sings the old songs alone. She doesn't teach them anymore. Her daughter is too busy running the guest house. Her granddaughter studies hotel management. There's no one left to pass the stories to. So when culture becomes product, what survives? What do we inherit when everything is for sale? And if even the soul of a people can be turned into a commodity, what happens to the soul itself? Because somewhere in a neon-lit city, another industry is rising. One that doesn't just sell smiles, but bodies. And the cost goes far beyond coins. Number 10. The silent epidemic of modern slavery. In the border town of Lao Cai, the air is heavy before sunrise. Fog creeps low across the station platforms. A bus door swings open. A girl steps in. No luggage, no farewell. Her sandals scrape the metal step. The door shuts. No one asks where she's going. All across northern Vietnam, buses like this move quietly. There are no signs, no manifests, just whispers. Tens of thousands of Vietnamese women vanish every year, many lured by promises of jobs in beauty salons, textile factories, or hotels. But what awaits them beyond the border is something else entirely. China, Cambodia, Myanmar. Some are sold into marriages, men paying for brides like one would order furniture. Others are locked in factories, their documents destroyed. Some are sent to brothels, and some simply disappear. In provinces like Ha Giang and Sao Bang, entire villages have been hollowed out. No young women, only grandmothers, children and husbands, too ashamed to speak. At first, the stories were rare, isolated, denied. But over the years, patterns emerged. Fake recruitment agencies, forged travel documents, border officers looking away, and behind it all, a market fed by desperation. Because in many rural areas, the promise of even a small wage abroad seems like salvation. For families with no land, no education, and mounting debts, a daughter's job overseas could change everything. So they take the risk, or worse, they're offered no choice. Some are deceived by relatives, by friends, by people they've trusted their whole lives. And when the truth is known, it's too late. In one village near the Chinese border, 17 women were taken in a single year. Only one came back. Her story? Silence. She doesn't speak. She won't look anyone in the eye. Her family moved away within months. No one talks about it. But everyone knows, even more alarming is what happens when they return, if they return at all. Reintegration is rare. Many are shunned, treated as if they brought shame upon their families. As if being sold was somehow their fault. Authorities make statements. Campaigns are launched. But in practice, arrests are few. Sentences are lighter than the damage inflicted. Meanwhile, the traffickers grow bolder. They don't just operate in shadows anymore. Some set up beauty salons to scout recruits. Others pose as boyfriends online, grooming girls over months, then vanishing with them overnight. Technology has changed the game, but the silence remains the same. And here's what almost no one outside the country realizes. This isn't just happening in border areas. Cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh are now being used as transit points. Women from the Mekong Delta are being funneled north, then moved out. Sometimes entire networks are involved, from transport workers to hotel owners. And sometimes even the victims don't know they're victims until the gates lock behind them. The tragedy isn't just the loss of these women. It's the void they leave behind. Communities crumble. Families fracture. A generation disappears, one bus at a time. And in the places where their names used to be spoken, only questions remain. Where is she now? What did they do to her? And why? Hasn't anyone stopped it? But there's another silence rising in Vietnam, a quieter one. The kind that doesn't come from loss, but from power, from control, from the stories that are edited before they are even written. Number 11, fake orphans, real prophets. In the soft light of a morning in Da Nang, a group of Western volunteers arrive at an orphanage. They're smiling, eager, carrying gifts, colorful toys, candies, coloring books. Cameras hang from their necks. Inside, children rush to greet them. Tiny hands reach up. Laughter fills the courtyard. It feels real. It feels good. But something doesn't add up. One of the boys pulls a volunteer aside and asks, quietly, when he'll get to go home. Another child draws a house, labels it "me," and hides it under his mattress. Because the truth is, many of these children aren't orphans at all. In rural provinces across Vietnam, families struggling with extreme poverty are approached by intermediaries, often posing as educators or agents. They promise a better life for the children, access to education, shelter, food. What they don't mention is what comes next. Once inside these institutions, children are coached on what to say, that their parents died, that they were abandoned, that this place, this orphanage, is all they've ever known. Meanwhile, the directors of the facility apply for NGO funding, appeal to foreign donors, publish videos online, set up tours, and open the gates to well-meaning foreigners who think they're making a difference. The children are paraded, photographed, and embraced, again and again. Some centers even rotate children from facility to facility, depending on when the donors arrive. Others inflate their numbers by bringing in kids for the day from nearby villages. Because the more children you appear to help, the more money you receive. This isn't a hidden network. It exists in plain sight. And yet few question it, because the idea of helping children is sacred. But what happens when kindness becomes currency? One volunteer returned months later to discover that the orphan she'd bonded with was living at home again, healthy, safe with both parents. The orphanage, still operating, still receiving donations. In some cases, the parents are in on the arrangement. They're paid or promised long-term benefits. But the children often don't understand. They're told to lie, to perform, to cry when the cameras are on. And as international demand for ethical tourism rises, so does the market for orphanage experiences. Some agencies even build new orphanages, not to respond to existing need, but to attract more volunteers. This creates a strange paradox. The more foreigners want to help orphans, the more children are taken from their families and labeled as orphans. And once money is involved, it becomes hard to stop. Vietnam is hardly the only country facing this issue, but its rapid development, combined with uneven regulation and a flood of foreign NGO money, has made it especially vulnerable. The most difficult part? Many of the children do need help, but the system built around them has turned their lives into someone else's story. A story that gets shared, liked, donated to, but never questioned, because questioning it would mean questioning our own motives. Are we helping because it's needed, or because it makes us feel better? And if the children are performing sadness for our comfort, what happens when the curtain falls? There's another place in Vietnam where young people are also living out someone else's expectations. But in this one, the illusion isn't survival, it's success. Number 12, hidden cities beneath the jungle. The jungle is loud, but it hides quietly. A drone cuts through the air above Ho Chi Minh, capturing a landscape so green, so still it almost looks untouched. But underneath this calm lies something engineered in desperation, an entire world built underground. 250 kilometers of tunnels, winding, breathing, sleeping chambers, trapdoors hidden under termite mounds, kitchens with vents disguised as anthills, escape routes that led to rivers, meeting rooms where entire offensives were planned, meters beneath American boots. The Ho Chi Minh tunnels weren't just holes in the ground, they were survival. In these narrow spaces, people lived for years. Families whispered lullabies underground. Soldiers moved silently, barefoot, rifles slung low. Children were born in darkness, never seeing the sun for months. The air was hot, the ceilings low, and the silence heavy. Even now, walking through the preserved sections made wide for tourists, the walls press in, the light fades, and a single step inside shifts your breath. But the real tunnels, many remain untouched, crumbling, sacred to those who remember what they were. Some veterans come back, not to guide or speak, but to sit in silence near entrances long forgotten. They kneel, they stare, and some never leave. A few former fighters, unable to adjust to the noise and pace of modern Vietnam, have returned to these forests, built small huts near old tunnel mouths, lived on rainwater, roots, memory. One man was found years ago living alone near Ben Din, no ID, no family contact. When asked why he came back, he simply pointed to the ground. Because for some, what was buried beneath wasn't just history, it was home. Today, school children visit these sites, giggling through the widened pathways, posing beside tanks left behind. Tour guides joke about how the American soldiers couldn't fit inside, but beneath the jokes is something harder to name. What does it mean when trauma becomes attraction? When a place of pain becomes a landmark on someone's holiday itinerary, some locals light incense before entering the tunnels. Others won't go at all, not out of fear, but out of respect. Because for decades, these tunnels were more than stone. They were breath, heat, flesh, and some believe that even now they still hold stories that were never told aloud. But far above these tunnels, something else is growing. In the open air, in daylight, and on screens, where what's hidden now is the truth behind perfection. Number 13, skin whitening and beauty trauma. A city bus screeches to a stop in downtown Ho Chi Minh City. Atop it, a billboard gleams in the midday heat. An ivory-skinned model smiles down at the traffic below. Her eyes digitally widened, her skin filtered into porcelain perfection. She isn't just selling cream, she's selling a promise, a future, a transformation. But underneath the bright advertisements and polished packaging is a quiet crisis. In Vietnam, skin tone is more than just appearance. It's a social currency. Walk through the markets of Da Nang, the shopping centers of Hanoi, or the alley shops in Can Tho, and the message is everywhere. Fairness equals status. It's whispered in compliments, embedded in job interviews, and reinforced in classrooms. Mothers remind their daughters to stay out of the sun. Brides-to-be invest months in whitening before a wedding. On TV dramas, the villains are often dark-skinned. The heroines, radiant, pale. But it's not just preference, it's pressure. And it starts young. Children in primary school learn to cover up during sports. Sunscreen is sold alongside school uniforms. By adolescence, whitening products aren't optional, they're expected. And those products, they're rarely safe. Many are homemade or imported illegally, sold in unmarked jars, bottled in back rooms. Some contain hydroquinone, a chemical banned in many countries. Others are laced with mercury, a toxic heavy metal known to damage kidneys and nervous systems. Still others include steroids that thin the skin, making it prone to bruising, infection, and permanent scarring. Dermatologists in major hospitals speak quietly about the growing number of cases: teenage girls with blistered cheeks, rural women with peeling forearms, men with damaged scalps from bleaching shampoos. And yet, even after diagnosis, many go right back to the creams, because to stop would be to fall behind. In Vietnam's competitive job market, appearance is more than aesthetics, it's strategy. Some companies, especially in hospitality and sales, have unwritten standards for skin tone. In the beauty industry, it's said plainly, white sells. And this beauty economy is massive. The Vietnamese skin lightening industry is worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Big brands dominate the shelves, imported from Korea, Japan, Thailand, France. But local knockoffs are cheaper, easier to find, and far more dangerous. In rural provinces, women share recipes: powdered starch mixed with lemon juice, bleach diluted with hand lotion, crushed birth control pills added for hormonal effect. There is no regulation, no oversight, no protection. And so the cycle deepens. The paler you become, the more you're praised. Compliments rain down. You're told you look richer, more modern, more desirable. But the truth is harder to see. Behind the mirror lies the cost. Skin so sensitive it breaks under fabric. Faces so thinned by chemicals they bruise from sleep. Teenagers addicted to whitening. And entire communities believing that their natural skin is something to erase. It's a standard imported over generations. A colonial remnant wrapped in glamour. Because when the French arrived, they brought more than rule. They brought ideals. Pale was powerful. White meant elite. And even now, long after independence, those ideals remain. Repackaged, resold, reinforced daily in ads, in media, and in conversation. The impact isn't just physical, it's psychological. Self-worth becomes conditional, confidence becomes manufactured, identity quietly edited. And it raises a larger question. If beauty is defined by what we remove, what does that say about what we keep? The whitening creams may fade pigmentation, but they also fade something else. They fade heritage. They fade truth. And for those who cannot afford the most expensive brands, the risk is even greater. Rural users, desperate for results, turn to black market products that promise transformation in just days. The results are often horrific: red, raw burns, infections, skin that no longer heals. And yet, these women return to the same market stalls. Because in a culture where fairness is linked to success, stopping is never as easy as starting. The real tragedy? Many don't even question it. They've never seen role models who look like them. Dark skin is edited out of magazines, excluded from commercials, left off billboards. So the cycle repeats, and for some, it escalates to surgeries, to facial reconstruction, to injections that promise radiance. But what happens when beauty becomes survival? That answer lies in the next story, where identity is no longer just sold, but stolen. Number 14, The Forgotten Mountains, a World Apart. The fog doesn't lift until midday. Up here, in the highlands of northern Vietnam, time feels stitched together by silence. It's not measured in hours, but in shadows, in footsteps, in the distant echo of a gong from the next ridge. Children run barefoot over rocks carved by centuries of rain, their cheeks wind-chapped, their laughter unburdened. Women bend over hillside terraces, wrapped in hand-woven indigo cloth. Their fingers move with instinct, not rush. They don't check clocks, they check the sky. This is home to the Hmong, the Dao, the Tay, the Thai, dozens of ethnic minorities, each with their own language, rituals, and sacred rhythm. A Vietnam that doesn't show up in brochures. But something is shifting. In the village of Sa Sang, a new road cuts through ancient land. It's smooth, straight, built for tourists. Around it, stalls pop up selling mass-produced tribal scarves that were actually stitched in China. A grandmother, once a spiritual leader, now poses for camera phones in exchange for candy bars. In a market deep in Ha Giang province, an elder carves bamboo flutes while his teenage grandson live streams the process. For strangers he'll never meet. He speaks Hmong. His grandson answers in Vietnamese. The difference isn't just language, it's legacy. These communities have lived off the land for generations. The hills are their library, the wind, their calendar. Their rice doesn't come from packages, it comes from memory. But today that land is up for sale. Piece by piece, plots are bought out for eco-resorts, trekking paths, or speculative investment. Some are legally acquired, others are quietly taken. Lines are drawn on paper that the locals can't read. Compensation is offered in Vietnamese, not in terms the elders understand. One morning in Lao Chai, an old man wakes to find a fence cutting through his field. He doesn't remember agreeing to anything. He doesn't even own a pen, and as the legal documents pile up, so do the tour buses. With them come expectations, performances, a request to wear traditional clothes for photos, even if it's a funeral day. The sacrifice of real life for curated spectacle. Festivals, once sacred and secret, now have time slots. Rituals shortened, dances rearranged for easier viewing. The spiritual becomes scheduled. It's not always forced. Sometimes it's welcomed. Tourism brings income, medicine, opportunity. But in exchange, something slips away. In classrooms built by aid groups, children are taught Vietnamese first. Their native tongues become recess language, then playground whispers, then forgotten. By 16, many leave for the cities, lured by promises of work, connection, light.